Hello guys, this is Tynrael. Welcome back to another episode of New Horizons Modded Career in Kerbal Space Program. Today we are going to be fast-tracking our Laythe probe in 276 days so that we can get an encounter, have it orbit, and start scanning to prepare for Bob, who will be following by in 1 year and 19 days. Currently I have this vessel here, which is cheaply built. Got my decoupler smaller than I need it because it costs less with a strut, and this is just to try and maximize the amount of money I can get. I have 588,000 funds. I was down around the 300,000 funds, but I've been doing some contracts to try to cover some of that. The contracts have not yet extended beyond the sauna system for me, and I think that may be because it is my understanding that they work with a combination of distance as well as reputation. My reputation is currently 71%. Oh, that's really shallow. And in the stock, around 50 to 60%, I found that I was getting sent to Duna. Duna in the stock is about 7 billion with a B meters away from Kerbal, and the closest planet to the sauna system in New Horizons is 12, which is Laythe, where I'm going. So I think that the reputation scales in an exponential way, so you need more and more reputation to get a higher percentage. And I'm probably pretty close to getting something outside of sauna. So in addition to getting money, I'm hoping that these will also bump me up to get contracts for Laythe, and I'll be able to get science, or some of those contracts, like collect science from orbit around Laythe, those kinds of things, so that I can get some benefit from rockets that I've already sent out into the field. You might also notice that my parachutes have a red box behind them. I've added a mod that lets you know whether the status for when you deploy your chutes is unsafe, risky, or safe. And I think that will help prevent some mishaps in the future. I have this tank with fuel. I don't really need the fuel. I'll just use it to bleed off my horizontal speed, because I want to land in the blue area of Saren, because I've been to the red area already. And I don't want the extra weight to keep pulling me down into the atmosphere. So I deployed those when they were risky, but it seemed like I was going too fast to risk much else. If my larger chute failed, I was hoping that the latter three might be able to save it, but this is quite a different view than we last had on Saren, where there were very little clouds. The sky was clear and the ground was red. So the purple sky and the clouds and the blue ground it's pretty interesting. You can see safe landing, Saren and Kerbal off in the distance. It's very, very rough terrain. But this vessel is successful. How much was that actually for? Oh, 131,000. I thought it was significantly more than that, but it's the reputation that I'm trying to build. In addition to this one, I also have an outpost that I have to land on after. So the after contract for the surface outpost is for 13 Kerbals and to have a research lab. So these made the rocket quite tall, and every so often I want to build things in a a Kerbalistic manner, so I have this absurd looking thing. After can be fairly rocky and uneven, so I'm hoping that this will just make it easier to land pretty much anywhere on the surface. The fuel tanks don't really matter, so I don't care if they explode. All that matters is that this central column is preserved. And I don't know how inefficient it is to have these spread out like this, but I just find it comical enough that I felt like doing it, so I did. I should have put a engineering chip on here so I can see exactly what my horizontal speed is to just get rid of that, but I will just time warp down here and follow the prograde marker. Seems to be becoming quite linear. I also have a contract that I accepted for sauna, which I will not be doing right now because it requires 6,000 units of liquid fuel to be on that station. And so I would have to put the station up into orbit and then refuel it before shipping it out. And that's too many pieces for what I felt like doing between missions right now. So I'm just going to finish this one and move over to the probe and collect some science from around Kerbal, the sun. There's a soft landing, just need to hold still for 10 seconds. Maybe if I turn off that, and there we have it. Hopefully this one will work more. 149,000. So these station contracts are very, very poor. I really need some that are several 100,000 or into the millions to be more beneficial. Now my Laythe probe here is the first vessel that I have sent out, or that I'm going to, that I've sent out from Sauna. So I have no science from around the sun yet. And so I'm going to just go through and get all of this and send it home. So all said and done, that was a nice boost of science. Now to just get there. I have this node in my future where I intended to make a course correction. My current periapsis is in the hundreds of thousands. So the only thing I may work on is seeing if my inclination is before or behind to see if I'm going to get a slingshot effect. It looks like I probably will, because this other orbit when I exit is larger than the one going in. So I can't quite tell what the periapsis or apoapsis would be for the encounter that I would have after doing this node. But the orbit has decreased to 8.7 billion from 46. So that's definitely slowing me down. I'm just worried that it may slam me into the planet. I'll be able to correct it regardless. And I think that I'm going to go ahead and do this. It's a very minor, very, very minor. 1.4 meters a second in 2 hours. So I'm going to throttle this down to 5. And it looks like a collision course. So I will just fast forward to the periapsis of this. And see if another small correction may be able to actually give us a periapsis or apoapsis. I'm just going to save it and get closer to this encounter. I'll decide what to do when I get there. And it looks like I'm being slowed down by... oh, the Laythe lander. I had actually forgotten about the Experience crew stranded here on Apter because I named the vessel as its default name. It's the Untitled spacecraft, so I was ignoring it. But let's see how far we can get with the amount of fuel that we have. So now they are safe. Kerbal is actually a great sweeping magnet that may pick me up if I do push out. Its plane is lower. So let's say I did a maneuver here. Just barely exit it. So it does give me an encounter with Kerbal, periapsis of 3 million. I add a maneuver there. What does it take to close the orbit down? Okay, now let's add those up. Node 1, 50 meters a second. Node 2 is accidentally placed and doesn't do anything. Node 3 is... sounds like this is something that I might be able to do. So I'm going to try. And this actually doesn't look too bad. So it turns out that with just a few hundred Delta V, you can take a rather, well, a medium-sized vessel, I guess, off of Apter and return it to orbit around Kerbal. Although not enough to capture it, I will send a vessel out to reclaim all of these guys. Okay guys, so when I transferred to Bob from my Laythe probe, he disappeared, all the space disappeared, all the GUI vanished, and things went pretty bad. This is not the first problem I've had recording this episode, and the thing is for this episode, I had transitioned over to the openGL version of the 32-bit instead of using the 64-bit version to see if it was more stable. And the reality of the situation is I have only encountered significantly more problems than I was experiencing with the 64-bit. So even though it uses more memory, I'm going to swap back to that because it's more stable. But for him, I have a periapsis of 1.7 million for Laythe, and I may work on that a little before he gets there, but I think that will be fine. And the vessel that we were working on, I will no longer be able to get to from here, so I'll go to the tracking station and go back to the probe. I hadn't realized that I had stopped recording, or that I never started recording again after I restarted, after I reset Kerbal Space Program after things went all screwy. But I used the large tank for the probe to decelerate into an orbit around Laythe, and it's actually pretty close to polar. And because I'm going to be sending Bob to the surface, instead of sending this to the surface when it's done scanning, I may send it to Durso if I'm able to get there, so that I can get some additional science from that. But for this, I'm not quite sure what the poles are. I guess that it's off-center from the light, which is what I am kind of thinking is how it should be. So I'm going to align it with the auroras, because I think that that will give me what I need. Okay, so I'm in position. Oh, I can actually see the islands now. They're harder to see from the map view. But I'm in position for the satellites. Hopefully it's able to work through this tank. But let's do a round of science before we get them started. And these are high over Laythe, so I will have to see how close the other side is. I think that that's probably not any closer. I think it's further away. So it will get closer. I will see if I get a low before I jettison these top experiments. So this is scanning. This will clip into things because I still have the fuel tanks on the side. But I'm alright with that. How is the power usage on this though? Increasing faster than it's going down now that I'm not transmitting. Oh, it actually shows me how much of the surface is being scanned. I never saw that before. That's really cool. I'll go to my periapsis and see if I get a different set of science experiments. I really like that. In space near Laythe, so these are different. And so this entire top part is now useless unless I wanted to carry it to Durso. I think this has one use left. And then I could get 2 more experiments for this. I will wait and see what the estimated delta V cost to get an encounter would be. I'm not sure that this mass would inhibit it too much. But so far for this episode, we've corrected Bob's course so that he will get closer. We are now in orbit around Laythe, scanning away with our satellite, which looks really awesome. And next episode we will have Bob arriving here, and we're going to plunge him into the atmosphere. He will not be aiming for one of these small islands, but just any part of the ocean. So I hope you guys are enjoying this series. Feel free to comment, like, and or subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode.